Imhotep, the Duel, Truck Driver, and Monopoly. This is Staying In.
This is one of those beers.
If you can hear it, if you can't hear this, Pete is pouring some amber nectar, some beer into a pint glass.
Yes, this is a beer that I got in my craft beer box because I've become a bit of I like beer now. I've decided.
Do you?
Yeah, I've decided that I quite like beer now. Because I always used to be very like somebody would say, "Oh, what do you want a pint?" I'll be like, "Yeah." What do you want? Lager? And now I'm at a point where I'm like, do you know what? Because I always thought that was it. Like I always thought lager all tasted the same and beer was all kind of the same. And now I've started becoming a bit of a fan of the beer. So I'm having an IPA today.
Go on. What notes can you smell?
Hops.
Tell me the tasting notes. Hops. Well, we're good.
Oh,
That's
so
one of the four.
quite a clean smell.
I'm getting the smell of some beer.
Some beer, but no, a very, very fruity smell.
Do you know what I smell, Dan? Pretension.
Oh, I think I don't think
Enthusiasm.
I don't think that's what it's called. But yeah. So and now obviously we've done the nose, and now I have a little a sippy sip. So I've been told through my research, because I've done research into it. Of course I have. That the first sip is meant to be the sort of like the wake up for the palate, and the second sip and the third sip are actually when you start to really taste what the flavour actually is. So you start to taste the complexity.
That definitely sounds like something a beer drinker would make up. Like, it's a wine. Those wine guys, yeah, they got it all wrong. They just do one sip and spit it out. It's really only by the fifth sip.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really don't get it until like at least the third or fourth pint, and then you really feel it.
Yeah.
Then you really understand actually what it's all about.
I like the idea that camera members are all absolute drunks. Like they're just like, oh, I need to get at least 4 or 5 of these in to really taste the I don't know, hops or something.
So Pete, do you know all about the Cyclops?
So hard left turn.
This is we're going into Greek antiquity. Yeah, I go on.
The Cyclops is like the 3-step process of judging a beer: how it looks,
Okay.
how it smells, and how it tastes.
So why is it the Cyclops?
Oh, because usually when some beers use the Cyclops sort of technique or proponent of measurement. So on the back of a glass, it looks like a Cyclops because you've got an eye above a nose above a mouth.
Oh, okay.
So it's known as
The Cyclops.
Like the Cyclops.
Yeah, okay.
Tasting.
Okay.
So what it looks like is it light? Is it, or is it dark like a stout? What it smells like and what it tastes like.
So this is a nice light one. That's the eye. That's the first bit.
I was going to say, because you just showed us your glass, forgetting this is an audio medium.
Yeah, and then I started describing it like a pro. And then I've got to admit, so I'm at the point with it. So I have a big box of beers now, which was very, very kindly given to me for my birthday. And they're all really, really interesting. They're all very different. And that was the thing that I found really, really fascinating about the whole thing, that there are lots of different kinds, and they all taste very, very different if you get yourself one that's pretty good. So I found that the thing I really like is dark ales. They're the things I really like because they taste a bit like raisin, which I find really fascinating. Like, I love it.
Okay.
They taste a bit like raisins and brown sugar and a little bit chocolate sometimes, and it's been really fun. And like I'm sort of getting into it from in the same way that you might get into it in like a food way. Like I'll have one in an evening. Every couple of evenings or something, and I'll be like, oh, I'll sit there and I'll do a thing, and that this is really the driving force behind why I'm doing this. So what I do is I take a photo with my beer, and I do this. So I'm taking a little photo, and there we are, and then I upload it to a website called Untapped.
Okay.
And Untapped is like the Facebook but for beer, right? And so you can check in with a beer and basically say, oh, I've got this one, and I'm enjoying this. And then it tells you, like, this is what you should be tasting. This is how good people think it is. Where did you buy it? This is, like, add a photo. And it's, like, the loneliest social network because I don't have any friends on it and I don't want any friends on it. But it's basically just pictures of me with drinking beer with people and me figuring out, like, which ones I like. And there's quite a lot. You know, you were talking the other day about that board game one where you constantly put in the numbers of the things that you do.
A score pal.
Yeah, score pal. Like, it feels a lot like that. In that, like, it's making me enjoy the thing in a different way, right? So it used to be that I would, like, you know, when I would drink beers, I would enjoy the feeling of getting drunk, and sometimes some of them tasted all right. Whereas now, I'm much more thinking about, like, okay, well, maybe I'll go and try a Goes. Have you ever heard of Goes? Goes beers? They're really odd. No. They're, like, really sour. They're fermented very oddly, and they taste.
I've had a sour beer before.
I think they're roughly the same. Again, this is the sort of level that I'm at, and i.e. not very
advanced.
Yeah, very very advanced. It's sort of sour, but yeah, and I'm enjoying it in this way because I have to actually think about what I think about the beer itself, and, like, leave a little note for myself, like, oh, I really enjoyed this, and I liked it because I like the taste of raisins, or I liked it because it was really clean and fresh, or, you know, something along those lines. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Sam, I have two questions for you.
Yeah.
How far away do you think Pete is from going full Willington on this? And is this the fastest he's ever gotten this far into the full Willington scale? Because this has moved very quickly from I like beer to here is all of the research I am doing and the social media networks I am attached to.
Yeah.
I don't think he's quite at full Willington just yet, but he's getting there.
It's certainly teetering.
When he signs up for the subscription crate
Oh, yeah.
of beer.
A subscription crate of beer recipes or something like that. So not actually getting the beer.
Starts making his own. That's full Willington. Is making
the other day. Oh, okay. Well, then we're dangerously close because the other day I was on Amazon. Other online retailers aren't available, and I was looking at. Like, I did type in beer crafting kit. I was like,
don't do it.
I was like, I could do this.
Don't do it.
No, I'm not.
I went to a beer festival actually the other day. I went twice in 2 days.
Okay.
On separate days. I wasn't, I could say that about anything, couldn't I? But,
That's how days work.
I went twice in the matter of 7 days, but only on Friday and Saturday. And beer is becoming one of those things now in my life. I went with my neighbour on one of the days, and we were chatting about it, and about, like, drinking, and how, like, for me now, beer is not something I drink to get me drunk. Yeah. Instead, I drink it as something to enjoy. Like, it is like some people might sit down and enjoy a glass of wine of an evening, or enjoy a gin and tonic. Like, for me, that is beer. So whenever I get any beer now, I'm much more interested in spending probably about the equivalent amount of money I would have used to have spent on buying something a little bit different or a little bit interesting, which means I'm getting less beer, but I'm doing it for the experience rather than just the process of
drinking 4 tins. Like,
yeah, exactly. So I'm I'm spending a couple of quid on one bottle rather than 4 price cut red stripes or whatever, because I'd much rather enjoy it, be like, oh, that was an interesting flavor and all that kind of stuff, rather than just drinking for the sake of it.
I definitely see it as like food now. I definitely see it as like if I'm out for an evening and we're going for food or something like that, I'll definitely look at, like, the beer list now and be like, is this any good? Is this stuff? Have I never tried this before? Like, it's definitely part of that, in the same way that I might be like, oh, mushroom stuffed gnocchi. That sounds nice.
Jesus Christ. How was your birthday? Happy birthday, by the way.
Thanks very much. I have been speaking about events related to it for the last 10 minutes and haven't been wished a happy birthday. So it's good that you're the first one.
That's because
it's good that you're the first
it's not your birthday.
Well, it's not now, but
So that's a simple reason. I'm not wishing you a happy birthday because it's not your birthday. On your birthday, I wish you a happy birthday.
I'll let it pass. All right, I'll let it slide, Dan. So, yeah, it was good. It was fun. I had a lovely time. I've been decluttering as much as I possibly can. So I know that you all tried very hard with that, and it was amazing to get the lovely gifts that you got me, the little digital gifts of like here's a nice thing to go and buy a PlayStation game, here's a nice thing to go and listen to an audiobook, that I've got to admit, as I'm getting older,
Go on.
I'm getting in. Oh God! I've just realised that I've just used the phrase "as I'm getting older" after a 10-minute chat about me saying something about beer and how I'm sort of getting into craft beer. As I'm getting older, I'm realising that like if I want something, generally I'll just buy it like normally, and like the actual like acquisition of stuff is becoming less and less appealing, I think, and. So, I've talked about it, it was one of my sort of New Year's things of like getting rid of as much stuff as possible and like, trying to declutter a little bit. And it's really nice to be able to be like, here's these bottles of chili sauce, here are these bottles of beer, these are nice things, here's some retro sweets, these are some nice things to, consume. Here's a fun, a Switch code, these are really nice things to have a really nice time with, but it's not that constant, my board game shelf doesn't have much space left. Do you know what I mean? And
I didn't realise that was a rule, because I would have got you something else different for the birthday if the rule was it could be anything as long as it can be consumed.
Yeah, that throws it wide open.
I was just told in no uncertain terms when we were all down in Bristol that you didn't want anything physical.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise it could have been physical as long as you could have eaten it or drinking it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, there is that. So,
because you sound like you're buying an awful load of stuff.
Yeah.
But the difference is that this stuff has somewhere to go.
I've managed to not get any big board games this year, but I have filled my office with crates of beer.
Crates of beer and chili sauce.
Yeah. So that's what I've been doing. It's been really nice. It's been good. I had a pedicure. That was my birthday treat.
Lovely.
Which is the foot one. It's where a nice person gets your foot.
The foot one.
Gives them a little rub. Didn't really know what they did down there, to be honest. And it was really good. And I also had a full body aromatherapy massage. And I did, before anybody asked, I did put my head in the right hole this time round.
Hang on. Full body.
There's another question that needs to be asked.
Yeah, full body. So, hang on.
Now, before we go down this is
okay. No, whoa. Using a percentage figure, how much was it full body?
That's gonna be quite a revealing number.
Well, no, because if you say 80%, then that's all right.
Okay.
They're missing some stuff out.
Anything encroaching above that becomes a little bit suspicious.
Yeah. Okay, so 80% is the right amount, right? Yeah. So I would say like this might just
98%.
This might just be my prudishness.
They didn't touch my eyes. Everything else.
I think it was about like maybe 85. Like, so for example, that the hands, and obviously nothing. This was a perfectly reputable establishment, but and maybe this is just because I'm not used to it, but I did feel as the hands were, massaging my legs and stuff like that, I did feel like they got worryingly close to butt. So like, and again, like not in a horrible way, but this is just what full body massage is. But the fascinating thing is, I was sort of, lying there trying to, didn't know if I should make small talk, didn't know if I should like, do you enjoy what you do? All that sort of stuff.
Usually you're meant to just relax and not say anything.
My mind was on fire. It was just like, what should I be doing? Should I be talking? Should I be saying something? I'm like, oh, should I put my hands here? What if I put my hands here? Like, should I, like, there was lots of moments like that.
I love the idea of like Pete there with the masseuse's hands, as you say, getting worryingly close, and him starting to panic, and in his panic, as they're getting worryingly close, he's like, do you like what you do?
So where did you study?
Where did you study this? So I definitely felt. So the one bit of discussion that we did have is she was like massaging my legs, and it was the legs and the back happened to quite close within one another, and then there was this moment where she was just like, oh, is that good? Is that enjoyable? Is that, or is that a bit too much or something like that? I was like, oh yeah, no, that's good. And she said something along the lines of, good, because you're a bag of knots. It was just like, all right. I felt like I'd failed.
Surprised.
I was like, but yeah, it was a really interesting experience because it's a very intimate thing, but it's also a very professional thing. And so it has this strange duality to it. And obviously, as for the sort of person like me, if you really overthink about these things, if you're a sort of overthinker, then it is very easy to overthink.
To be fair, I've had a couple of massages in my time. The first time I ever had a massage, I used to get my hair cut in this salon near where I worked because it was just the closest place and it was just easy. So I used to get my hair cut there. And they were trying to kind of do some extra stuff, and they did they decided we're going to do more beauty stuff and we're going to do some massages. And so if you'd booked a hair appointment, you got a free, 10-minute massage, 10, 20-minute massage, whatever it was. So I kind of booked a hair appointment. They're like, do you want this? I'm like, I'm busy right now, but yeah, sure, put it on for next time. So next time I came around, you're like, oh, you didn't do that massage. Oh, I can't. I'm busy. Sorry, I can't do it. Next time again, they kept saying it. I was like, fine. I'll say, okay, I'll do it then. I got a bit of time.
Oh,
so
no.
Okay, good. I'll take you upstairs. They took me upstairs to this kind of back room, and there was this. It was all, as you say, Pete, all very professional.
Yes.
And I kind of walked in, and there was like the table there. It wasn't a table with a hole in the middle for your face.
Hole in the middle.
But it was a masseuse's table, and the one was there, very nice. She was like, okay, if you want to get ready, and she left the room, and I'm like, I'm not entirely sure what kind of massage I'm getting. So what level of undressing is required for this?
Oh my god!
Because I wasn't given really any detail. So I was literally, and I'm literally on my lunch break at this point. Okay, it's not like I'm. I want to get my haircut. That's all it is. I just want to get my haircut, and I'm left in this really awkward situation where I'm just sitting there in an upstairs room of this kind of salon, slowly unbuttoning my shirt, thinking this is very odd, and then they're just sitting there, kind of without a shirt on, hoping that that's all I have to take off because I'm not prepared for anything else.
Yeah.
And then she kind of came in, and then she got me to lie down, and it turned out okay. But very strange, and it was not a particularly enjoyable experience because I was extremely tense. But yeah, for me, it's always that question of what level of undress is required.
Yeah, but because it's such a weird question to ask anybody. Like, hello, stranger I've never talked to. At what level of nakedness should I be?
Yeah,
it's such an odd question.
I mean, at least with a full body massage, you're at least down to kind of the final question.
Yeah.
Kind of underwear or no underwear. You can make the decision on the rest of that.
Yeah,
but again,
exactly.
You don't want to be that guy who like, oh, why are you naked? I don't know. So I tend to leave my underwear on. So I'm like, you don't need to go there. It's fine.
Yep. I'm like, keep that stuff on. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't. No one needs to see that.
No. Good haircut though.
I think I've got a new entry for one of our categories of games. You know how we don't really give awards out per se, but we do give certain pats on the back.
Yes.
For so me and Chris have Sam and Chris's breakfast games, and then which I guess is a sort of an award for the best games to play during breakfast because it's the most and my favourite part of every day is having breakfast.
Yeah.
To my own personal detriment sometimes. If I'm getting up for work for a shift at 4:30 in the morning, I will get up earlier to have breakfast than I need to, just because I want to have breakfast. So we've got that, but then we've also got the very unique awards category of best game to be served with a cup of tea.
Yes.
Very, very hotly contested topic and genre of game.
It is.
Yes. We get many publishers get in touch.
of which the latest entry was Railroad Inc., I believe.
Yes.
But I might have a new entry.
Okay.
And what's interesting about this entry is that its elder cousin is actually in the awards list for best games to be played at breakfast.
Okay.
Which, yeah, it's Imhotep, the Duel.
As it Imhotep,
have you
as in the like Mayan, Incan, that sort of...
Well, Egyptian.
All right. Egyptian thing. The Egyptian lad.
The Egyptian thing. Have neither of you... All right, is this going to be an uphill struggle? Have neither of you played Imhotep?
No. Never heard of it.
Okay.
But I'm open and I'm ready to receive the information.
Yes.
Like you're in an upstairs room in London with your shirt off, you're open and you're ready to be...
I'm a little nervous about what's going to happen. I'm hoping I'm going to like what I hear.
So I hear you're Egyptian.
Yeah. So I'm gonna roll this back a little bit until I get to some sort of level of understanding of you both.
Board games.
Okay.
Okay, to help you get on that path, am I right in thinking that it's made by the same folks who do the exit games?
It is.
Oh.
It's brought to us by our lovely friends at Kosmos, and they were very, very nice to send us a copy. So thank you very, very much to everybody there.
That's exciting.
So this is a game from Kosmos, and one of the things that Kosmos do really well is they have a line of 2-player only games that they release. They have quite an extensive list of them: Kahuna, Targi, Lost Cities, Imhotep the Duel. There's loads of them, tons. And when I was just getting started in the hobby, I lent on those games quite a lot to begin with, because when it was only me and my wife,
Don't Pete, don't laugh. You just encourage him.
the best way to get into the hobby and to carry on enjoying games was to like really focusing on like what are the best 2-player games that we can just enjoy whenever we want. And so Lost Cities and Targi are 2 of our favorite games, and they're both produced by Kosmos. In fact, there's a brand new version of Lost Cities out at the moment, and I'm exceedingly tempted to get it, even though it doesn't really change much from the version I've got, but ours is so overplayed that it's becoming quite frayed at the edges. But I mustn't do that. I mustn't.
Okay.
Anyway, so Imhotep the Duel joins that impressive legacy of just 2-player only games that they produce. So Imhotep the Duel is based off the original game called Imhotep, which is one of our best breakfast games. And this is a game designed by Philip Walker Harding, who you may know also designed Baron Park. No. Okay. And Sushi Go.
Big fan
Yes.
of Sushi Go. Yes, big fan.
Okay, so there we go. That I knew that would be my sort of reach that level.
That was
of
your
understanding.
baseline attempt.
We finally got somewhere. We're finally there. Right, so you're with me. So
So Imhotep Duel is like Sushi Go. Done.
Yeah, done.
Moving on.
Nice one.
yes, kind of, but not really. So Imhotep, the original, was a contender for our breakfast list, the staying in breakfast games list, because it's a very hands-off experience. It doesn't take up much space on the table. You're effectively just working in your own little empire to build temples and tombs, and you're working on your own little thing, basically shipping these wonderful like stone cubes, these wonderful wooden cubes from a quarry into your little part of Egypt, and using those stone cubes to build up parts of your Egyptian city, basically, and whoever builds the best one wins. So why I was interested in Imhotep the Duel was because I already found Imhotep an interesting 2-player game to start with. So I wondered what is actually going to be the different thing here that makes it really interesting, and really basically what is the interesting thing here that means it has to be a 2-player game, because there's something very interesting about 2-player only games. And I was listening to the No Pun Included podcast, and they were talking about the same subject. And Efgar on there mentioned about that it's this almost is this level of intimacy with a board game. Because when you play a 4-player game with 2 players, there's always something in the back of your mind that makes you think that this is a game that other people can enjoy, and you can bring other people in, and you're sort of just slicing off a small part of it to enjoy with one other person. Whereas when you play a game that's designed just for 2 players, it becomes a lot more of a condensed and intimate thing to enjoy with someone else. So you're really making time for that other person to enjoy it. Like, no one, if anyone else came along, no one else would be able to enjoy this experience because it's just between you and one other player. And that's what I really enjoy about 2-player only games, really in general, is knowing that even though I do have quite a lot of games in my collection that are at the exclusions of others, I also love the intimacy and the interplay it brings, knowing that this is a game that has just been designed for 2 people to enjoy and no more. So what Imhotep the Duel does is it riffs on that idea that Imhotep has of you're building these 2 Egyptian cities, and in a sense you're still building the same sort of things. You're building tombs, you're building pyramids and obelisks. So what Imhotep Duel does, it has a central puzzle that the whole game hinges around, where you and the person you're playing against are always competing for the things that you want to help your city grow. So in front of you, you've got these little player boards in which you have these wonderful little player areas in which you will slot the tokens that you need. So it has this wonderful little slotted piece of card where you can put your obelisk pieces and start building up this little obelisk tower, and there's this other little slotted piece of cards where you start putting in your pyramid pieces, and you line them up like it's a pyramid. So you start with 3 tokens and then 2 tokens and then 1. So you start creating this little pyramid shapes, and this other little area where you're making, and sort of they got these pharaoh masks on the tokens, and you're creating this little tomb area of your Egyptian city. So there's a wonderful thematic part to the game where what you're actually creating has a real physical representation on the board, which actually mimics a lot like what Imhotep does, where Imhotep, you're actually building a vertical obelisk out of these cubes, and you're actually building a 3D pyramid. Here you're doing exactly the same thing, but on a 2D thing with tokens. And that's what I always really loved about Imhotep, is that you would always leave the board with this massive stack of horizontal cubes wobbling around on the table as you sort of measured who made the biggest obelisk, or someone's actually made a little pyramid in the middle of the table. So it's got the same things there, but it's all doing it with these 2D tokens, essentially. Okay. You know what I mean? They're not 2D, but they're just flat. Yeah. So it's all about competing to get those tokens. And so in the center of the table, you have this 3x3 grid. So this grid with 9 spaces on it. And on 2 sides of that grid are ports in which there are boats docked on the ports, 3 on each side. And on those boats are then 3 spaces on which tokens selected at random will be set. So on one of those boats might be an obelisk piece, a pyramid piece, and a tomb piece, a pharaoh's mask to go in the tomb. And on your turn, what you can do is one of 3 things, and the most important thing is place a meeple down into one of those 9 spaces on the square. And depending on where your meeple is, when you unload a boat, that meeple will receive a certain token from a certain ship. So if it's the meeple closest to where the harbour of where a particular ship is, that meeple will get the token furthest away from it. If there's another meeple behind it, that meeple will get the second one, and then the next meeple will get the next token. Okay. And then they will be divided up depending on what meeple belongs to which player, and then they go into their city immediately. Right. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. This sounds quite complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated to explain, because if I was to show you the board, or you were to just see a picture of it,
I'd be like,
you'd immediately grasp what it is, because it's basically a spatial puzzle. Okay. Because essentially you've got ships moving horizontally up the board and ships moving vertically across the board in terms of tokens they're able to distribute. So it could be that you've got meeples in a line ready to collect tokens from a specific boat, but my opponent could then say they're unloading a ship on the vertical axis, which means that I'm now getting different tokens from a different meeple because they bisect at different angles.
Okay.
Anyway, it sounds confusing. It's incredibly simple, but the important thing is that simplicity in its design and that competition that it builds between you and another player is essentially the crux of the game, as you're always in this race to compete for exactly the pieces that you want to get to finish the things that you want to build in your Egyptian city.
Okay. If I was to relate it to another game, in my mind, this sounds a bit like Istanbul. In that, like, you're going around, you're picking things up that you're essentially getting resources to turn those different kinds of resources into completing objectives to score points.
You're definitely picking up resources to complete certain objectives, and there's definitely an effort to tactically place your meeples in positions that mean that you can secure those resources ahead of your opponent.
Okay.
But there is no real movement around any sort of board.
Okay.
You put your meeple down into one of the 9 spaces, and that's it. You're locked in there. But the genius and the true crux of the game is not only thinking about what pieces you might need and what you need to focus on, but also you're always having to think about what your opponent might do.
Okay.
The crux of the game and why it really does work as just a 2-player is because it's not as simple as, well, if I put my meeple there and unload the ship on my next turn, I'm going to be getting that token, which is going to finish off that pyramid, which is going to get me X amount of points. Like, on the face of it, that's what you think the puzzle is. But really, the puzzle is, if I put my meeple there, theoretically, I could get that token. But I know my opponent could do this and mean it has that effect. Or they could do this and have this effect. Okay. So you're always having to consider what your other opponent is doing, what they're focusing on, and what they're building, which means it creates this wonderful, peaceful competition. And this is why I think it's one of these games that has to be served with a cup of tea, because it has these lovely moments where you just have to sit and look and take in the puzzle and really think about what your move is going to do. Are you going to, because you can unload a boat and all the tokens go to your opponent, but that could be something that you do to stop them getting other tokens that they're lining up to get from other boats. So there's a lot of things that you can do in that sort of vein where you could be very aggressive, you could be very diplomatic, you can be very fair about your approach to how you play. And really, it's Imhotep the Duel is one of those games where when me and my wife were playing it, it was not really a game where we felt particularly we're not really very enthused about it. Like, if we finished it, we weren't ever like, oh, let's play that again. Or it's not really one of those games that really captures that kind of excitement. But that does not mean that it doesn't have a place in my collection, because I think it very much does, because it just seems to be a lot like Imhotep, just have this wonderfully relaxed and gentle approach to a 2-player game. It's almost like a game of chess, but just on a nine space grid rather than a whatever space grid it actually is. I can't remember. It's one of those things I probably should know. But but do you understand what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's one of those wonderful, like, it's almost like sharing a Sudoku puzzle with someone, but you're both competing to get it filled in first. Like, it's not the most exciting game I have ever played, but it has this wonderful place in my collection where when the mood is just about right, when we're just sitting down for the first cup of tea or we're just getting relaxed into a nice afternoon of gaming, it can really be one of those games that just sets the tone absolutely right, where there's not too much competition, there's not really too much, real head scratching that needs to be done. It can just be one of those wonderfully gentle and peaceful games that can just let things start bubbling beneath the surface before you then go on to something maybe that's a bit more complicated and requires a bit more headspace.
So how long would you say a single game would take on average?
For about 20-30 minutes.
Really? Okay, I thought it'd be a lot longer than that.
No, it's also a real firm recommendation if you're just getting into the hobby, or maybe you don't have a lot of time to put to to play games. The setup is
Preach.
one of the it's one of the easiest setups for a board game I've ever played. Like, it is just literally just like putting down things onto a table and everything's just put down and that's it. It's all done. It has and this is another great thing that Kosmos is just brilliant at. It comes in a box which is perfectly sized for all the things that it needs to contain.
Love that.
Like, it just slips onto a bookshelf and it doesn't take up any space at all. It is a remarkable little thing, and I do enjoy that it is a game just for 2 players, because it really does, as you said, Dan, it really can just set the pace, and it just like fits a little. You know, when you're sitting down, it's just like, well, we've just got half an hour and I don't really like want to start playing this.
Yeah.
I don't really want to start setting up that. It just like, well, if we play Imhotep the Duel, I know it's only going to take 5 minutes to set up. I know we're going to have a great time playing it, and it's going to be an interesting distraction for that amount of time. How's life on the open road, Pete?
I feel so close to you, Dan, because you were talking
Interchangeable, but it's fine.
you were talking about you don't really have that much time, right? And like, so your free time is relatively meager because you've got all these other things that you definitely have to do, like look after another sentient being. So you need to take these things away and do those things. Well, I also find that I don't have quite enough time in the day, and I have been relatively busy recently with a lot of different things. And one of the things I really, really enjoy is audiobooks. I've talked about it before, but I really enjoy them. And I want to enjoy them as much as I possibly can. And unfortunately, I definitely have that thing where I can't listen to audiobooks and write at the same time. So one of my other free time things that I like doing is writing and being creative in that way, because that's really the only way I can be creative. I've been doing that. And one of the things that video games often do, most video games that I like, they'll have quite an engaging story. They'll have music that I really want to listen to that really builds into what the world actually is, and they will have very, very intense play or systems that you really have to be focused on, and you can't really be listening to an audiobook while you do that. So I also have this separate interest as a video game developer in looking at weird releases, and we talked a little bit about it, I think, when I talked about Dangerous Driving, which was that I found that really fascinating from a release perspective. And the game Truck Driver, which is on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and is coming to PC very soon, is also one of these weird releases. And I think there's a
So this is a truck driver simulator. This is just
it is a trucking simulator.
driver.
Yes, it's called Truck Driver. It is not related, before you ask, to the very famous Euro Truck Simulator series. It's not related to that.
That's the one I'm thinking of, yeah.
So it is from a company called Triangle Studios and a publisher called Soedesco, and that's also a bit weird, and we'll talk about that in a second. But there's the whole thing is a bit weird from a release perspective, and I always find these things really interesting. So the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions, they're out. They came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and no one's reviewed them. No one. As of recording, there are no Metacritic scores for this game. And Metacritic scores are, for a game that gets a physical release, you'll usually get them, right? Because big outlets that like to review games, they will go and find all these games. They'll review them. They'll have a big meta score on there, and you'll know roughly how good that game actually is. This game has 0 Metacritic score reviews, which means it either hasn't been of any interest to traditional outlets like your Eurogamers and your Nintendo Lifes and the Sixth Axis, or it simply hasn't been sent to them yet. And I don't know which one is the case. It came out on PS4 and Xbox One before the PC version. The PC version is actually coming out a month after the console versions, and that's very rare. Like, usually it's like PC first, okay, we'll get all the bugs fixed, now the console versions.
Well, unless you're Rockstar.
Unless you're Rockstar, unless you're very specifically aiming to do these sorts of things. And usually that's because there's some sort of deal in place. So like Sony and Microsoft, they'll give enhanced coverage to big Rockstar games, and so on. So a bit of a weird release in that way. It sort of entered early access vaguely or it's sort of being seen as an early access release on consoles. It's also a simulator. There aren't actually that many simulators on consoles. Certainly not that many simulators to do with vehicles specifically. So you do get Car Mechanic Simulator. You do get stuff like Surgeon Sim, which is on the opposite spectrum for the simulation games, but not many vehicle games. And certainly Euro Truck Simulator, which you would have thought would have like rolled out on consoles by now, that's not out either. So a bit of a weird release in that way. Also, weird thing, I was following this when we were doing one of our games at work, because we were just about to do a beta, and they were just finishing theirs, and they finished their beta, and they basically announced in this video, like, yeah, with thanks for all your feedback, we're gonna redo all the environments. Like, we've got like 6 months to go, but all right, see you in 6 months. My family. So, like, yeah. And I was like, wow, that is astonishing, because when we were doing our game, I was like, oh, that doesn't happen to us. So that was fascinating. But that studio, Triangle Studios, they're no longer going to be involved in the project. The game is actually now that they've shipped it, once they've shipped it on console and PC, they're now pushing it over to a Brazilian developer who did one of the latest Gears of War. They've done like a bunch of stuff with like a load of really big high-end AAA console games, and they're going to be adding content. They're going to be expanding the game out. And most of these games that are simulations, you know, they either build out on DLC or they'll actually build the actual simulation out a bit more. So there's tons of really interesting stuff that's going on with it from that perspective. But also, I just wanted to listen to audiobooks. I just wanted to listen to audiobooks, and this is the perfect game for that.
So take us through the gameplay. You're putting in Truck Driver
into the system,
game, and
in it goes.
So this isn't. Is it still a simulation, or does it feel a lot more arcadey?
Yeah, so it is. So it's definitely a simulation of driving trucks rather than specifically being a driver of trucks, i.e., you are not simulating the life of an individual, you are simulating the actual act of driving, which I think...
So what are the kind of things that you're monitoring? Fuel?
So I'm monitoring fuel. I'm monitoring the sleep, my sleep, so I do have to monitor that. Wear and tear on the tyres, the engine, the body of the truck. I'm upgrading my truck.
Yeah, good.
I'm, adding different stats in and stuff like upgrading the engine so I get a slightly better, engine power. I don't know, horsepower maybe. I don't know.
Go on. Right. Yeah.
So I'm doing all of that stuff, and the first thing you're told is choose a character. So you get to choose one of 3 different characters, and I was like, oh, okay, because I was thinking this might be more about the driver. So you pick that thing, and then there starts a very small amount of storytelling. They're actually trying to do some storytelling stuff here, where you're on your phone texting this person who gives you the jobs. And there's about, so I think there's 6 different quest givers. And you start off working for a guy called something Dover. I can't remember his name. Something Dover. And he does fish. So you're giving these missions. And the missions are take your truck and hook up to a trailer and drag it to the location that it needs to be. And it's all set. It's an open world, so it's set on this one island. We'll talk about that in the island, because the island is amazing. And I think it's one of the best things in the game itself. And you go from point to point, and you deliver your cargo, and then you go back, and then you check in, and you get your money, and you get your experience points, and you use your experience points to upgrade so that you get these passive bonuses so that you can earn more experience, or you can get more money, or you can get better wearing engine parts, or whatever it is. And this small story, well-defined, well-scoped out little story progresses, and this is what I was expecting more of in the game. It is set on this tiny little island, and it is just you doing this trucking, basically. And I thought that the sort of fantasy is that you're essentially, this is essentially Stardew Valley truck simulation, right? You essentially have the business that is the one trucking business in this space, and you are helping out all of the island folks that they can help with their businesses. They give you money, they earn money themselves, and you sort of become a pillar of the community, progressing this very light story forward. Again, very much like Stardew Valley. And again, the similarities with Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley, I listened to a lot of audiobooks when I played that. It's very repetitive. So there's the simulation itself is you can bang in a steering wheel if you want to, but obviously I don't have anything like that. So, but you're driving a truck, and you obviously have to deal with all of the things that you would normally deal with, like acceleration and braking and stuff like that. You can also have manual drive vehicles.
Do you have to stick to speed limits?
So, sort of. And this is where the simulation starts to fall over.
The rules of the island.
Rules of the island. So there are speed cameras, and if you're caught speeding, you'll get a fine, and it's quite a hefty fine in relation to the amount of money that you'll actually earn. If you run a red light, you will probably get fined as well. But the rules of the road don't really stretch much beyond that. So obviously you need to stay on the right-hand side of the road. So this is set in sort of like a European, feels like either a sort of Scandinavian small fishing island kind of thing. It kind of feels a bit like that. So you have to stick on the right-hand side of the road, otherwise you're going to career into stuff. But if you're, there's very little penalty for overtaking somebody on the opposite side of the road round a blind corner at night. Like, there's very little penalty for that.
What's the penalty if you crash?
Nothing. Like, you might damage your vehicle. There's no cosmetic damage whatsoever. It's only damage to the performance of the vehicle. And even then, the actual performance of the vehicle doesn't suffer that greatly. So there's very little penalty, either through actual, law sort of penalties, or you mess this up.
But is that the fault of the game, or is that the designers just assuming that you're buying this game to stick to the laws of the road, so you wouldn't do that anyway? So why put in a charge for killing a family of four?
And that's what I do. I role play being a good driver, right? So you really do have to role play, because if not, the game isn't going to do it for you. The other vehicles on the road are pretty smart, although at times, so for example, when there's a motorway and there's another bit of motorway and they're joining together.
Okay, yeah, slip road.
Yeah, something like that. They won't see a massive HGV and be like, I know, I'll brake. They'll just be like, I'll pull out in front of this thing, and maybe that's realistic. I don't know, but they are very much, they're hell for leather. Some of the cars. So it's not the smartest vehicle, vehicle driving model in that way for those vehicles. For the truck itself, they definitely feel really heavy and weighty, and it's really fun to drive them and have a bloody great big trailer hanging out the back and trying not to smash into things. But again, the simulation again seems to fall down when you get to things so there are pedestrians, but clearly they wanted to keep their low age rating. So as soon as you get anywhere near a pedestrian, literally driving past it on the road, they'll fade away, because obviously they don't want you to go into them at all, right? So
that's like do you remember Driver?
Yeah, when they would jump out the way.
PlayStation. The moment you get close to a pedestrian, they'd jump out the way in this dramatic style.
So they just fade away. There are weird little bugs and stuff here and there, and I think the community, because I've been following it as much as I can, the community has noticed that there's quite a lot of bugs. So, for example, occasionally you'll be driving along and the car in front of you will just vanish. It will just go. But
that doesn't sound like a bug. That sounds like a sweet
relief.
It
sounds like this island is actually filled with ghosts. Honestly, and so the simulation of the actual vehicle itself is pretty good, but they can certainly do better. It's not as deep as Euro Truck Simulator. I mean, you do have to do things there are emergency lights. You do you should indicate. There are you have to turn the engine on and off, just little simple things like that.
Can you customize your
You can customize the outside, yes, to a limited degree.
Oh, right. Okay, but you can't hang a massive light in the middle of it that says something like Big Peter's.
No. So again, it's really, really low scoped. And in fact, actually, the trucks themselves are wildly, wildly disappointing.
So from what I'm hearing, it sounds like we need to introduce the third award criteria for our podcast. So we've got Staying In's best breakfast games, Staying In's best games to have tea with, a cup of tea, and now Staying In's games to read to.
Yes, games to read to. because that is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I've got my...
Yeah, because Stardew Valley is like...
Yeah.
When I play it, I listen to the Count of Monte Cristo.
Right. And it's that... The thing that I love about Stardew Valley is the thing that I love about Truck Driver. And that is an easy task. It's repetitious. I know exactly what I'm doing. And I feel like I'm making incremental progress through the game, right? And I'm building myself out in this game. But yeah, it's been this game that I have found fascinating from a release perspective. Found fascinating from a like... just a well-scoped game, like good, enjoyable, like good 6 out of 10, enjoyable 6 out of 10 kind of a game. I just want to deliver parcels to ghosts in my truck while I'm listening to Northanger Abbey. Listen to question time. So we get these in from Twitter at StayingInPod, Facebook at search StayingInPod, and StayingInPod@gmail.com. which you can find on stayinginpodcast.com. This one is from Kathryn Hopkins at Calon_Lan.
Hello.
And Kathryn very kindly asks us a question, but it's a tricky one. If you could delete one of the, quote, old family classic, end quote, board games, i.e. Jenga, Monopoly, Cluedo, etc., which one would you remove from history? But consider... what are the implications of this, and what might never have been made today if that game never existed? So, old classics, good ones here, Jenga, Monopoly, Cluedo. I think I'd also include things like Snakes and Ladders, Mousetrap, Scribble Scramble,
Noel's House
Party, the
Game of Life.
That one where the Surgeon Sim guys took the idea and made it into a video game.
Operation...
Ludo, yeah. So the classics. I think anything that you might find in a slightly run-down, like Holiday Home in Winchelsea. Like Risk, yeah. Oh, man, Risk. Which one would you remove? And what do you think the consequences of that would be? So for me...
Monopoly.
Really?
Monopoly.
No.
Monopoly. Out of the window.
No, the
Monopoly.
Repercussions of losing Monopoly would be felt.
I think
you would destroy the British economy by removing Monopoly.
No.
Yeah, that American-owned game.
I think the repercussions of removing Monopoly are nothing but good.
But, okay, to counter that, Monopoly is a game that everyone knows how to play. It's also the one board game that most people have played. And I think it's kind of an... Yeah,
but and it's for that exact reason why it should go, because... it gives everyone such a false impression of what board games are. It's that 3-hour boring trudge where one person dominates and no one has any fun. Also, it was a stolen idea, and also it has spawned a lot of games from it that show what's bad about board games, and Monopoly perpetuates this idea of the worst, like Monopoly for millennials and communist Monopoly, which was just the worst thing that's ever been made, and like Star Wars Monopoly. And
so
the best thing Monopoly's ever done is given The Simpsons one of their best jokes, where it was Edna Krabappel. That was it.
Okay.
No one can convince me that Monopoly is ever a good idea, and the absence of it is nothing but a good thing for board games.
I mean, I would disagree with that, but there's no point in me disagreeing because Sam's has already closed his ears to the arguments.
No, I've not closed my ears. Go on. Why would Monopoly be a good thing? I can give you. For each one of your
I'm coming at it from a personal point of view. I've got many fun memories of playing with Monopoly. But to go back to my obviously facetious comment that it would destroy the world's economy, I would argue that there is elements of Monopoly that have perpetuated the idea of areas of London perhaps being more wealthy than they would have otherwise have been. If I ask you, is Park Lane or Mayfair a wealthy area, you automatically think, yes, it is. And why do you think that? Because it's in Monopoly. If it's not, then perhaps Mayfair, Park Lane, they're not as well to do as they might have been. Nobody ever wants to live in real life on Old Kent Road. Why would you? Because we all know it's a bit of a dive.
Is that a bad area? Is that a bad area of Monopoly?
Old Kent Road, yeah.
That's the cheapest area of Monopoly.
But surely surely for like every area of Monopoly is supposedly given favour to and gentrified, that it's doing the same to all the cheap, poor areas. So Monopoly is actually like trodden down.
No, wait. I'm not suggesting it's a good thing that it's making Mayfair rich. I'm not saying it's a good thing that it's making Old Kent Road poor. What I'm saying is it's perpetuated the economy of those areas. So by removing Monopoly, you are throwing that all up in the air.
Yeah, and producing a level playing field in which people can succeed and fail on their own steam rather than something that's stupid.
I'm increasingly liking Sam's argument here. I think this is a pretty good one.
Exactly. Monopoly was originally designed to be an anti-capitalist game, and it was designed to show how capitalism is a bad thing, and it's promoted fairness and equality. Then it was stolen. Yes. The idea was stolen from a woman by men and produced and developed by Hasbro, and even now they've not even recognised the act of they didn't even like apply or steal. They just stole the whole game wholesale and then just started making it.
Yeah.
And like it is just a game mired in disgusting, horrible practices. Like from the ground up, it just is a terrible game.
Kathryn, what have you done?
Fun.
Kathryn has absolutely caused it. Sam's crying. All right. Well, we can get rid of that one. Dan, which one would you get rid of?
Now, see, mine is, again, it's a personal decision, mainly because I'm not very good at it, and it has the potential to make people feel stupid.
Twister.
No.
I loved Twister.
Because that's part of the fun of that.
Yeah.
And the game that I want to get rid of, controversial choice, would be Scrabble. Because I'm not great at Scrabble. When under pressure, I don't come up with good words. And so I feel stupid. And it's not an experience I enjoy. I've never had an experience with Scrabble that I've enjoyed.
I do agree with you on Scrabble, but not because it makes you feel... Well, I think that Scrabble makes you feel... Depending on who you play, it can make you feel stupid for all the wrong reasons, because if you're really playing Scrabble, it's just players win because they know the most obscure 2-letter words. And it's just like, oh yeah, QI is a word. It's like, or ZP is a word. So it's not like anyone really beats you because they know they've got a great extensive vocabulary. It's just like they've learned all those little 2-letter words that can get you out of a bind. And it's just like, just cheap. Even though one of my fondest memories of playing Scrabble, and my wife and I played Scrabble a lot when we were first courting, as it were. Like we played Scrabble over the phone.
The 1850s.
Go on. Chill out. Scrabble. This is before we found bananagrams, which is, Scrabble, but everyone's on the same level of intelligence, like actually respects your intelligence. Bananagrams, it's a really good game.
I see bananagrams. But happy. Let's replace Scrabble with that.
Yeah. And we went to this pub, and Lisa's like, "Oh, you always take me somewhere. I'm going to drive you to a pub. We're going to have a lovely, nice dinner, and we can sit outside and play some Scrabble and just chill out." It's like brilliant. So we drove to this pub, and it was called like the Owl Inn, right next to this canal side. Lovely, picturesque part of Cheshire. Wonderful. Walked in, there was a wake, and we were like, oh. And
you slowly sat down and set up the Scrabble board.
Yeah. Just
we'll go and eat outside.
Yeah. Just slowly putting letters onto the board. E M B A R. So I think I would choose. I think for similar reasons about like board games being misunderstood for what they are. I think I would probably choose like Snakes and Ladders, because
but no. If you get rid of Snakes and Ladders, you get rid of a whole like litany of metaphors and allegories. About,
I'm all right with that, because I don't necessarily think that they're always useful. So I mean, like I think Snakes and Ladders is like, again, in terms of the misunderstandings about what games actually are, there's zero skill in Snakes and Ladders. Like, it's literally all luck. Like, it is just rolling a dice. Like, and I kind of feel like a lot of people have played Snakes and Ladders simply because it's such an easy game that children of like 4 or 5 can comprehend it. And I think that it also gives this bad name to what board games actually are, in that it really focuses the mind on, at such an early age, on like luck, on like, you don't really need to think about board games. They're not really going to teach you anything. They're just a thing to pass the time. There's no sort of engaging with like there isn't a Snakes and Ladders meta. You know what I mean? Like there isn't a...
But surely Snakes and Ladders has a point in sort of board games, because especially like when Dan's little one starts to get older and needs to like start understanding things like numeracy and consequences and like actually mechanics of, like, if Dan sits him down and tries to explain to Toby about how randomness in a board game isn't really interesting, and here's how to play Agricola, like, it's not going to go in. But if it's just like, right, to a child, Snakes and Ladders is a wonderful eye-opening concept, I think, to the world of board games. Like, you roll a dice, right, and if you get a 3, you're going to go up on this ladder and you're going to shoot up all the way to 13, but you've got to
the elation that you get from that.
Yeah, and then the opposite emotion of just like, oh no, I've hit a snake. And when you're a child, you don't put 2 and 2 together. You don't realise it's a random. You put all your faith into like, right, I'm going to roll a 4. I'm going to roll a 4. Like it's that base instinct of thinking. It's that thing that you have, that innate sort of superstition that we all have as humans, that we can somehow affect this random roll of a dice. And on a base level, that is still what I look for in board games. Like, that's still that like in Quacksalquedlinburg, it's the same thing. But more of the agency is put into my hands.
Yeah.
Sort of like, well, with probability and risk, I can sort of put the odds in my favour. But essentially, all I'm doing is still playing Snakes and Ladders.
But there's more of a finesse to games. Like, I feel like Snakes and Ladders is badly designed in so much as, like, you can be in a loop infinitely, right? Like the joy of going up that ladder is almost immediately reduced by immediately going back down a snake. And like, you could just end up in this perpetual bad luck cycle where you just never finish the game, right? And there's no real, the only success is all building towards the end. A much better game that I think, I don't think it's a good game, but I think it's a better designed game than Snakes and Ladders, would be Mousetrap, right? Because you get to, you've rolled the dice, you get to add a thing onto the playboard, and that you're constantly building this thing, and your mind is relating your dice rolls to both luck and to building this contraption up. And you do then get the payoff, and everyone gets the payoff. No one really cares who wins Mousetrap, but everyone does love like winding up the crank and seeing this, this Rube Goldberg machine actually work at the end of all of it. And I think that that's a much more, even though it is like a lot more gimmicky, I think that it's a more enjoyable way of, it's a more enjoyable first move into playing board games. I think it's a much nicer way of doing it than a game that is a bit sort of just naff.
But I think if you took Snakes and Ladders out, I think even though it is basic and you can get trapped in loops and it's not great, I think there's the potential there for other designers to not be able to look upon a situation and go, hang on, what's the fun here? If it's not in the randomness of rolling dice, then it's that sense of, as Dan was saying, it's that sense of false achievement when you hit a ladder,
sure.
And it's that sense of self-punishment when you go down a snake. So I would argue that if you get rid of Snakes and Ladders from the annals of board gaming history, you lose that one designer who looks upon it and goes, if only I could enhance that part of Snakes and Ladders, then I'd be able to actually make a more interesting game and take it on from that.
That was Staying In with Daniel Frost, Sam Turner and Peter Willington. Many thanks to Kosmos again for providing us with a copy of Imhotep the Duel. I played it with Sam last weekend and can confirm that it has managed to capture the essence of the original in a beautiful breakfast format. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to leave a review too, we'd be really chuffed to bits. Keen to dig a little further? why not head over to stayinginpodcast.com. On it you'll find our page on Board Game Geek, our Steam curation page, and all the different ways you can follow us. At Staying In Pod is where you need to find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Again, for those of you who want to get fit and do so for a good cause, come and join our team. Just head to your app store and download Charity Miles for your mobile telephone. And look for us in the app at #StayingInPod. That's all one word, #StayingInPod. Thanks for listening.